Most people have been conditioned to think that anarchy means chaos, violence, and destruction, and that didn't happen by accident. Governments and powerful institutions benefit from equating freedom without authority to disorder, because it discourages people from questioning whether policing and centralized power are actually necessary. In reality, anarchy isn't about chaos. It's about voluntary cooperation, personal freedom, and communities governing themselves without force. Labeling anarchy as chaos is nothing more than propaganda from those in power who fear losing control. With that said, here are some of the reasons why policing should be removed. Reason number 1: personal freedom. One of the strongest arguments is that people should have the freedom to live their lives as they choose without interference from the police. When law enforcement gets involved in personal decisions that don't harm others, it can infringe on individual privacy and autonomy. For example, policing things like personal relationships, lifestyle choices, or recreational drug use often criminalizes behavior that is fundamentally harmless. Allowing individuals to make their own choices fosters personal responsibility and respects human dignity, rather than creating a system where the state decides how people should live. Ultimately, freedom means being able to pursue your own life as long as it doesn't directly harm others. And unnecessary police involvement undermines that principle. Reason number 2: abuse and misuse of power. Another good reason is that cops often abuse and misuse their power, frequently resort to unnecessary violence against both people and animals. This isn't just speculation. It's easily verifiable through publicly available police body cam footage, much of which is uploaded to YouTube. The evidence shows a pattern of excessive force, demonstrating that these abuses are not isolated incidences, but a systematic problem. Reason number 3: society functioned long before modern policing. Modern centralized police forces are a relatively recent invention, yet human societies existed and functioned for thousands of years without them. Communities historically relied on mutual aid, social norms, restorative justice, and collective accountability to resolve conflict and maintain order. Harm was addressed through mediation, restitution, and community involvement rather than armed enforcement by a separate authority. This challenges the assumption that police are a natural or necessary feature of a social stability. The societies were able to organize, cooperate, and resolve disputes without permanent armed forces in the past. It raises a critical question: whether modern policing is truly essential or simply a system that replaced community-based solutions with control and intimidation. Reason number 4: historical roots and social control. Modern policing evolved from systems designed to control Pacific populations, such as slave patrols and strike-breaking forces. Critics argue these origins still shape how policing functions today. Reason number 5: unfair and abusive search warrants undermine civil liberties. Another major reason to remove the police is the abuse of search warrants, which erodes the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches. While police are not supposed to obtain warrants without real evidence, the system relies heavily on police honesty, vague standards like probable cause, and judges who often rubber stamp requests. This means a corrupt or determined officer can exaggerate, omit facts, or outright lie to justify a search, with little risk of accountability. Even when warrants are later found invalid, evidence is frequently still allowed under good faith. Exceptions: and officers rarely face consequences when a system allows people's homes, data, and private lives to be searched based on weak or fabricated justifications. Constitutional rights become conditional, not guaranteed. A system that enables this level of intrusion and abuse cannot be reformed at the margins. It must be dismantled and replaced. Reason number 6: police threaten freedom of speech and dissent. Police increasingly act as enforcers of acceptable speech rather than neutral protectors of rights. Protests, public criticisms of police, and political dissent are often met with intimidation, surveillance, dispersal orders, arrest, or force, despite being constitutionally protected. Laws like disorderly conduct, obstruction, or vague public safety statutes are frequently used to suppress speech that challenges authority. When armed agents of the state can decide which speech is tolerated based on convenience or perceived threat, free expression becomes conditional. A society where people fear retaliation, arrest, or violence for speaking out against power is not truly free. and a system that often suppresses dissent cannot coexist with genuine freedom of speech. Reason number 7. Qualified immunity places police above the law. Police enjoy legal protections that ordinary citizens do not. Qualified immunity makes it extremely difficult to hold officers personally liable. They are creating a class of people who can violate rights with minimal consequence. Reason number 8. Policing relies on fear, not consent. Policing functions through the threat of punishment and force, not genuine public consent. People comply with police orders not because they agree with them, but because refusal can lead to arrest, violence, or worse. This creates an inherently unequal power dynamic where obedience is forced, not earned. Systems built on fear may enforce order, but they do not create real safety or trust. Instead, they discourage people from seeking help, speaking honestly, or participating openly in their communities. Reason number 9. Expensive and ineffective. Police departments are funded by taxpayers, yet that funding produces little return when it comes to solving serious or violent crimes. A significant portion of violent crimes go unsolved, and police often spend minimal time investigating serious cases. Instead, resources are largely directed towards minor infractions and victimless crimes, such as drug possession, traffic violations, and low-level offenses, because they are easier to enforce and generate measurable activity like arrests and citations. This results in a system where public money funds go to constant surveillance and punishment of harmless behavior, while victims of serious harm are left without justice. If taxpayer-funded institutions consistently fail at their most important responsibilities, then it raises serious questions about whether those resources should be redirected somewhere else. Studies show increased police funding does not reduce crime rates. Reason number 10. Fear-based systems cannot produce ethical outcomes. Policing relies on fear of punishment to control behavior, but fear only suppresses problems rather than addressing their root causes. This approach leads to ongoing cycles of harm, resentment, and resistance, making it impossible for such a system to produce truly ethical outcomes.